Listen, what we have facing us coming up this year is critical to the future of the country. I think we all know that. We've been able to change this country with virtually no money, because that's not what it takes. It takes resolve, it takes people who want to work hard, and it takes that eternal vigilance. So like this.
You know, it's kind of amazing, but we just had the 7th annual Tax Day Tea Party over in Hauppauge. Again, I was unable to make it. It's the first time I missed one since we started. But I just wanted to thank everybody that actually showed up for that. I know there were some new people there as well, and I want to thank them as well. Any new members that are in the room tonight as well, I'd like to thank you. You know, it's been a long time. Kind of been a long time since we started this organization. And it's important that we get a good idea of why we're here and a little grip on what our continuing goals and objectives are. When we first started CSA, people wanted to know what we stood for. And I'm telling you right now that this is what it is. And I'm going to read that to you right now. Quote, "I have little interest in streamlining government or in making it more efficient, for I mean to reduce its size. I do not undertake to promote welfare, for I propose to extend freedom. My aim is not to pass laws, but to repeal them. It is not to inaugurate new programs, but to cancel old ones that do violence to the Constitution, or that have failed in their purpose, or that impose on the people an unwarranted financial burden. I will not attempt to discover whether legislation is needed before I have first determined whether it is constitutionally permissible." Now, these are the words that Barry Goldwater said a number of years ago, and they've been the guiding principles for CSA ever since. And I think these are worthy goals. I think it's important that we follow these principles and that we do everything we can at the grassroots level to make sure that we take actions that'll achieve these ends. Now, in that regard, I know a lot of people lose focus, and we have a lot of consternation about how successful our battle is. We look at a huge changeover in the House and the Senate in the last few years. You saw a last election, presidential election, where Obama wins by a slim majority. Basically, states like Florida, North Carolina, Virginia, Ohio failed us. Well, we need to make sure that doesn't happen again. What really bothers me is that we won in the Senate. We won big states out there. There was an 8-seat shift in the Senate of the United States, yet we have a president out there that doesn't care. He doesn't care that there's a Congress. He doesn't care that there's a Senate or a House. He's working unilaterally, and I happen to think that's wrong. So anyway, I just want to get a couple of those points out because it's important that we stay focused on those things. To get us going today, I just wanted to play a couple of things that I do. There are some things that I do once in a while when I'm starting to feel doubtful about the future, and there are a couple of inspirational things that get me through the day. I want to play one of them for you right now. I know you've probably seen it before. I know you know who said it, but we need to be and remain in touch with what's important to us in our country. Obviously, we're doing it for ourselves and our posterity. It's important that we continue. I want you to see that video right now.
If we look to the answer as to why for so many years we achieved so much, prospered as no other people on earth, it was because here in this land we unleashed the energy and individual genius of man to a greater extent than has ever been done before. Freedom and the dignity of the individual have been more available and assured here than in any other place on earth. The price for this freedom at times has been high, but we have never been unwilling to pay that price. Those who say that we're in a time when there are no heroes, they just don't know where to look. The sloping hills of Arlington National Cemetery, with its row upon row of simple white markers bearing crosses or stars of David, they add up to only a tiny fraction of the price that has been paid for our freedom. Each one of those markers is a monument to the kind of hero I spoke of earlier. Their lives ended in places called Belleau Wood, the Argonne, Omaha Beach, Salerno, and halfway around the world on Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Pork Chop Hill, the Chosin Reservoir, and in 100 rice paddies and jungles of a place called Vietnam. Under one such marker lies a young man, Martin Treptow, who left his job in a small-town barber shop in 1917 to go to France with the famed Rainbow Division. There on the Western Front, he was killed trying to carry a message between battalions under heavy artillery fire. We're told that on his body was found a diary. On the flyleaf, under the heading, "My Pledge," he had written these words: "America must win this war. Therefore I will work, I will save, I will sacrifice, I will endure. I will fight cheerfully and do my utmost as if the issue of the whole struggle depended on me alone." We must realize that no arsenal or no weapon in the arsenals of the world is so formidable as the will and moral courage of free men and women. It is a weapon our adversaries in today's world do not have. It is a weapon that we as Americans do have. Let that be understood by those who practice terrorism and prey upon their neighbors. As for the enemies of freedom, those who are potential adversaries, they will be reminded that peace is the highest aspiration of the American people. We will negotiate for it, sacrifice for it. We will not surrender for it now or ever. We are Americans.
Yes, we are Americans. You know, we have a president, we have a lot of people in this country who think that we should apologize for the prosperity and freedom that we've been able to produce here in this country. I wrote an article a couple of years ago, "Stop Apologizing for Freedom and Free Enterprise." Well, that's correct, and I still believe that. I just think the popular culture today and the press and, you know, the liberal establishment in this country have gone a long way to try and convince young people that a more opposing and larger federal government and local government is important and good, but it's not. We know that. We're conservatives and we know that these things just don't work. We've seen it elsewhere in the world. We've seen the breakdown in history in those places, etc. But there's another video out there that I want you to see, which basically kind of describes the goals and objectives that I have and the new vision for this country, a new vision for the 21st century, and a new future for the country. Now, this was a video that was shot about a year ago during a campaign in Virginia where we had Ken Cuccinelli running for governor, and there was a lieutenant governor that was running as well named E.W. Jackson. He pretty much said in a very short period of time a lot of the things that I feel. And I want to play that for you right now because I want you to know that there are other Americans out there who are willing to stand up for what's right and are not afraid to say it. I want to play that video for you right now of E.W. Jackson.
We want you to fulfill your dreams, to be able to support your families, and to know that your children will have a better life than the life that you have had. I grew up in a foster home for most of my childhood. We want the dream of hope and opportunity that America has meant to me to be available to every child. How do we do that? Ronald Reagan said, the answers are not necessarily easy, but they are simple. Here's how we do it. Get the government off our backs, off our property, off our guns, out of our families, out of our health care, and out of our way. I took an oath in August of 1970 in the United States Marine Corps to the Constitution of the United States that I would preserve, protect, and defend it against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and bear true faith and allegiance to the same. That oath never had an expiration date, and included in that oath is something called the 10th Amendment to that Constitution, which says that the Commonwealth of Virginia is a sovereign state. We do not have to ask the government's permission to get our coal and our oil and our gas out of the ground. We do not need their permission to farm our land or sell our products. And we do not need their permission. We do not need their permission to have a pond on our property or have a party in our house. We stand up for the free market because there is no liberty where the government dictates your economic destiny. And we stand up for parental choice in education because there is no liberty where children are indoctrinated instead of educated. Ronald Reagan said freedom is never more than one generation from extinction. We do not pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for and protected and passed on to them to do the same. Or we will spend our sunset years telling our children about the United States of America where once men were free. That's not our vision. Our vision is captured in my favorite patriotic hymn, "My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing, land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring. And because this is my vision for our country, I am proud to say that I am not an African American, I am an American." I am tired of the hyphenation. No more hyphenation. I have a 21st century vision for our country. It is a vision to end the racial and class and economic divisions that liberals have foisted on us. It is a vision of faith, a vision of family, a vision of individual liberty and personal responsibility. It is a vision of one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This is our vision. This is our hope. This is what I will fight for.
How's that for a speech with some fire and brimstone, huh? I mean, that's really what it's all about. We have to have the same vision. We have to have the same courage. We have to have the same spirit to go out there and try and save this country. You know, it's going up on, in the state of New York, a lot of people say, well, it doesn't matter. But it really does matter because there are a lot of things going on elsewhere in the state, meaning not New York City, where things are going right, where there are conservative politics. You know, the Republicans, believe it or not, control the Senate in the state. Now, that's not necessarily a great thing, but it's certainly better than having the New York City establishment control it. And it's important that we understand that coming in the presidential primary year, that New York State's going to have a big decision in who's going to be responsible for representing the Republican Party in the next presidential election year. There's no doubt about it. New York, just by virtue of the size of its state and population, has a large number of delegates that will be sent down to the Republican convention. So it's important that everybody in this room and everybody in our movement understands that we can have an impact on what's going to happen in the next presidential election. Now, I'm usually not too happy with the nomination process that takes place with the major parties. You know, you look right now at what's happening in the Republican Party. You got guys like Jeb Bush, especially down here in Florida, who has his fingers and hands and money and everything. He's even been able to infiltrate some of the grassroots organizations. He's had people removed from positions and put his own people into power. The good thing is that there are a lot of Republicans in this state that aren't necessarily fans of Jeb Bush, and there's also a lot of them are fans of Marco Rubio. You know, the grassroots down here in Florida is pretty strong, conservative grassroots I'm talking about, and they seem to be split on that. So there's no guarantee that Jeb Bush will even win Florida. But in either case, he's trying, and he's got $50 million to do it. Now, I'm going to do what I can down here with the local grassroots here to make sure that that primary in Florida does not go his way. But there's a lot that we can do up in New York as well. And we have to make sure that somebody like that, an establishment candidate, that's just going to run the same old campaign that Romney and McCain ran and lose again, can't happen. We need to work hard in New York in that primary. We have to make sure that a true conservative wins that primary. And we have to make sure that we send down to the Republican convention delegates that will vote for a true conservative. Now, we all know what's going on with the country. We all know that this economy that everybody talks about, the press tries to cover it. I know the Obama administration, every time a jobs report comes out or an economic report comes out, I don't know if you noticed, but after it comes out, within 2 or 3 months, they have to revise the numbers back downward. It's because you can't trust anything that's going on right now, anything that's coming out of Washington. Don't trust it at all. But we also have a severe financial problem. We have the debt problem, and we are facing a potential crisis in the future. I want to present one more video to you. It's relatively short. It's from my old friend and yours, Gary Burnson. Gary Burnson, who ran for the U.S. Senate there, ran for the Congress there. He's now down in Florida. You've seen him on Fox News a lot. I know there are a lot of friends in the room right now that understand who he is and what he is. And I just want to play a little spot that he did at one of the recent meetings we had down here in Florida, where he discusses the potential impact of interest rates and the huge national debt, just to give you a brief frame for how important it is that we do our jobs at the grassroots to make sure that we do have a future.
We owe $17.5 trillion. Now, let's understand this. $17 trillion is the national debt. It's being serviced at less than 1%. We're paying roughly $556 billion a year. There's a series of different loans on this. So we're paying $556 billion a year out of our budget. Now, what does the budget look like? Pretty simple. $3 trillion in, $4 trillion out. We collect $3 trillion in taxes, ladies and gentlemen, and we spend $4 trillion on programs. So we're borrowing $1 trillion every year, and then these lunatics at the Fed have been printing $1 trillion every year. And for the borrowing of $1 trillion and the printing of $1 trillion, we got 0.01% growth this quarter. That should scare you. Holy cow. Zero growth for all that. We are in real trouble. Now, if one looks at interest rates, now here's the key. You got a $4 trillion pie over here, right, that we're paying out. $556 billion of that, 1/8 of that services the debt, and we're at less than 1% interest. The moment interest rates go back, even if they were only to go back, housing loans would go back to 6%. That means a 2% increase in interest rates right now. A 2% increase would move our payments from $556 billion a year to $1 trillion, and then maybe beyond $1.5 trillion if it goes up another point or so. What does that do? It sucks up 50% of what we paid in. It wipes out all programs. They have taken the greatest political experiment in the history of mankind and bankrupted it. We are in serious, serious trouble.
I know you were probably aware of how important the debt and interest rates and things like that are to our country, but it really can have a detrimental impact on wealth in this country, your personal wealth. As a matter of fact, if we do ever have that kind of crisis again, I know I've explained this before, I don't know if you're interested, but you could probably look it up. But it's very possible that the next time we have a financial crisis, it's not going to be a bailout, meaning the Fed's going to print money, to bail out the financial institutions. We're going to have a bail-in. And a bail-in simply means that there's going to be a government that comes out and decides that there's a national emergency, and they'll probably just do a one-time 50% tax on all your liquid assets. So if you have any money in the bank and you think that the crisis is coming, just be concerned that you might lose half of your money in one day through the power of the federal government. So anyway, that's another thing that's going on. Well, that's about it for now. I'm sorry I can't be there again. I do look forward to being there in a couple of weeks and perhaps meeting with people. Definitely want to meet with the executive committee. And just all I can say is keep up the fight. What you're doing is important. What we are doing as a movement and an organization is important. And I know, for one, that if we all work hard, we'll be able to take this country back. Thank you and have a good night.